This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. You're listening to the Lansing Online News Show with Bonnie Buckaroo and Bill Castanier on a nice little steamy night here in downtown Lansing as everybody's getting ready for the Common Ground. Makes parking exciting when Common Ground comes to town, but we got in early, Bill, so we snuck in under the wire.
And I don't have a clue who's at Common Ground, so don't ask.
I don't either, unfortunately. I don't know why. I haven't been keeping track of that these days. Although we had a heck of a light show last night.
It was more interesting than the fireworks, anyway.
We've had nights and nights worth of large booming noises that have made every dog in the 50-mile radius go freaky.
Made them howl.
Well, my neighbor ended up with a stray at her house. Poor old, it looked kind of like maybe it had some basset in it, older dog, that had obviously bolted. One of the things that they tell you is that a lot of times dogs will go right through the screen door when they hear those fireworks. But it has turned into a war zone in some places in the city.
Well, nearby my house it has, and it starts about, well, just before dark and goes until nearly 3 a.m.
It's stunning how
for
many.
3 nights in a row.
Yeah,
And
there's
they're not firecrackers.
what are they? Howitzers,
Oh, geez.
bazookas?
I mean, you could fight a war with these things. They
I
are
know.
loud.
I think that's the difference, isn't it? It's what's allowable now as a result
What's
of the change
legal?
in the
Yeah,
law.
absolutely.
And the idea was that we were somehow going to get this thriving economic activity out of this, right? I mean, this was how the bill
For
was
3
sold to
weeks.
people.
Right.
It was a nice bipartisan effort. This is what bipartisanship gets you. The Democrats and the Republicans got together, and what's the only thing that they could pass? It's
And I think
something to allow fireworks.
I think mostly what you see is people from out of state set up tents on, like in Menard's parking lot and sell.
Yeah.
There's only one or two places in Lansing that are permanent.
But I've seen fewer of the tents around this year, haven't you? I think that the people who went into this as an entrepreneur, I'm going to make a fortune because there's been all this pent up demand. I'm not sure the demand is really there. Yes, people are blowing them off, but I'm not sure they're getting them.
If I were to buy fireworks, I probably wouldn't buy them from a guy that sets up a tent.
Yeah.
It's just me. But
I'm never comfortable driving by the tent because I'm always expecting that's the time somebody will throw a nice cigarette in there.
I'm amazed they don't go off.
Well, who is it? The meteorologist from WXYZ. Did you see the report this afternoon? He lost his eye in a fireworks accident out in Iowa, and there are no details, but I mean, these are not the safe things that one might want to wish they were.
No, and there's margin for error. It's pretty low.
Yeah, I mean,
I've seen what they shoot off. They are big. It's a lot of dynamite in them.
Whoa. Just what we need is to encourage more bombing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then now that people can have their own drones, it opens up all sorts of new possibilities, doesn't it? Or should I keep my big mouth shut?
There's a big case going to. It's not the FAA.
Yeah.
And they have like the authority of the Supreme Court on drones.
Oh.
And it's being contested.
There is quite a concern about that because, I mean, I watched a video the other day that showed a drone on campus.
That's what this involves, but not MSU campus, another campus where the exact same thing was done.
Some individuals decided to run a drone on campus in order to show how you could video. It was a gorgeous video. They went right up the front of Beaumont Tower. It was cool.
Did you go back and look at the one where he went into Spartan Stadium?
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
Not when anyone was there. But
wow.
That same thing happened at another college campus. I don't remember which one it was. And the FAA just came down hard on them. So they're making an appeal. And this doesn't go through a normal court process. It goes only through the FAA.
Wow. I know that there's a class on campus that my friend Dave Polson teaches, and he wants to teach how to do photography with drones. Wonderful, you can do wonderful aerial photography. There's all sorts of applications for agriculture where you could check your fields where it's hard to get into the fields. But because of the way the laws are written now, the irony is he can't really fly the drones on campus with the students. But yet, then I watched the movie that showed somebody obviously has.
And I forgot the name of the person that did that, but they are incredible. They really know how to operate that thing.
That's amazing.
It's a GoPro with, I forgot the name of the drone now. It's named after like a jet, F-35 or something like that.
For under $1,000, you can be in business. Wow, that's cool.
I wonder how long it took them to learn how to use it, though. Those are pretty complex.
Well, Amazon wants to be able to deliver packages by drone, so we'll see. Amazon probably has more clout with the powers that be.
Just not in France.
Just not in France, yes, yes. Well, Bill, I got to ask you, there is a big doings this week with the Historical Society of Greater Lansing.
Yes, continuing the Saturday walking tours. This week is the walking tour of Rio Town, which is the first time this has been done down there since, especially since the renovations have gone on and all the buildings. And it starts at 10 a.m. It meets at the depot or the Board of Water and Light reconstructed station.
It's a beautiful facility.
It's right past the tracks, obviously. And it'll go to some interesting buildings and talk about some things that aren't there because just adjacent to those tracks used to be the Rio Motor Car Company. And it's totally gone now, of course. I think the last time any of it was left was in the mid to late 70s. But that's where Ariol set up his second car company, later to become White Motors. And there's a building left from that across the street. But they'll go to there's two very unique gas stations down there, that were former gas stations rather. And they'll talk about the story of those two. One is the very, very tiny one that used to be the Mug and Brush barber shop. It's probably one of the smallest barber shops in America. That was what it was noted for.
Oh, I think I've
Very
seen
small. And another one was a Sinclair station back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But I think people will find it interesting. It's an easy walk. Rio Town's not that big. You know, it's only really about 4 blocks at the most. So it'll be 4 blocks up, 4 blocks down.
Who's the speaker?
It is Jim Perkins. Jim Perkins is a architectural historian who used to teach here at LCC. He is probably the most knowledgeable person about City of Lansing buildings that I've ever met. He's unbelievable detail that he knows, and he's fun. So it's not boring. It'll last about an hour and a half. People can ask questions. There's interesting buildings down there that are relatively unique, like there's a simple Art Deco building out there made out of concrete. They'll talk about the history of that, when it was built. Most of those buildings were built in the 30s and 40s, though.
Oh,
So
cool.
they don't go way back like in Old Town. But I think if everybody wants to, it'd be a really good way to get a pretty comprehensive knowledge about what was and what is in Rio Town now.
And Rio Town is on its way to a new future. So some buildings are gone now. Will they be looking at some of the new things?
I think you're going to see some, yes, they will, but I think you're going to see some infill at some time down there because there is some vacant property.
I see.
And a lot of those buildings are on the river.
Yeah.
Which most people don't know, and they're adjacent to the river trail. So, I mean, they're nice pieces of property. There's little housing on either side, but I think there is going to be a resurgence in Rio Town because probably 15 buildings have been restored in the last year to 6 months.
Well, tell us again where people will meet.
Meet at the Board of Water and Light Depot on South Washington.
South Washington. And what day and time?
It is Saturday, this coming Saturday, and it is at 10 a.m.
10 a.m. And the tour will take about how long?
About 90 minutes at the most.
Oh, okay. So that's a nice morning walk.
It's a nice, easy walk, too. It's only 8 blocks at the most.
And you can go back there to the facilities at the Rio Town, at the BWL, and have access to that.
Now, one of the things that area needs is I think there's only currently one restaurant.
They think they're hoping for a lot more
Yes.
and some food trucks. I keep hearing they want some food trucks down there as well. They have a somewhat different vision for that area, I think, than they did for Old Town. A little different. You think there were more professional buildings?
I think so, because I don't know a city our size can support 2 Old Towns.
Right, yeah.
We can only be so quaint.
And only so many artists to go around.
Yeah, there really are. I mean, we're not a big city.
Yeah, but they're unique little neighborhoods.
It's a cool little neighborhood down there, though, and it's cleaned up. The sidewalks are huge. I mean, they've made this a very attractive place.
Cool. That Saturday, 10 a.m., everybody needs to congregate down there. These things we're not allowed to say are free, but they are.
Right.
But let's move now and talk with our first guest. Our first guest is Ray Holman. Ray Holman is the representative from the UAW here in the community. Not the UAW that represents the auto workers. It's the UAW that represents those public employees. And I wanted to ask you, Ray, we've talked with you before, but not since this decision that came down from the Supreme Court on unions. And we keep hearing about all these narrowly crafted decisions that when you start reading them don't sound so narrowly crafted. Has your organization had an opportunity to digest what that new Supreme Court decision means and what it's going to mean for your group of workers here in Michigan?
Well, obviously, I represent the UAW Local 6,000, which is state employees, and we have 17,000 state employees in all the departments. And Quinn versus Harris dealt with public employees, in particular healthcare employees. It was started in Illinois. And essentially, there was concern that the case could extend right to work for less to all public employees across the country to the remaining 26 states that were not already right to work for less. In Michigan, as I think everybody knows, we became a right to work for less state last year. So in some ways, for the people that I represent, we already are a right to work for less
Right.
state. The court did not go all the way. They indicated that some of the home health care people could not be part of a union or would not be they did not have to pay a fee to be in a union. But in terms of extending it to other public employees, the U.S. Supreme Court did not do that. But again, going back to us here, anyway, the people that I represent, state employees, we already are, again, a right to work for less. And we've been dealing with that since last year here.
Many people are looking at these recent Supreme Court decisions and saying, yes, they may be narrowly crafted. This is intended to only apply to home health care workers. But I noticed that analyst Jeffrey Toobin on CNN said that what he's seeing out of this court is a narrowly crafted decision that sort of begins to set precedent. And once they get the nose under the tent, Judge Alito in particular seems to be very much then using that as criteria for overturning things later. So did you feel that this was yet a sort of bellwether case for what may be coming in the future?
It looks like they are setting the stage to move further and further down the road that way, and they're taking incremental steps along the way. And I don't think they didn't go for the whole thing this time, but I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years from now we see, court cases where they try to do that. There's some strong union state, New York and California, and that would really be adversely affected if all public employees essentially become a right to work for less.
Here's where I've been confused because I was confused when right to work came in. My original assumption was that it might mean that no dues were collected anywhere and that you would not be able to use any kind of system to collect them from each employee. You kind of have to go door to door, find people, almost like begging with a tin cup. It isn't quite that bad. But what is the circumstance? What did right to work mean in terms of your union being able to collect fees from people?
Yeah, and I think it's important for me to clarify again that I represent the UAW Local 6,000, which is Michigan State um, employees, and we fall underneath civil service. So it's always a little bit different for us because of our 1963 Constitutional Convention that gave sole authority to our wages and benefits under the Civil Service Commission. So we bargain our contract with the governor, but it's ultimately approved through the Civil Service Commission. And so it's my situation and my employees may be a little bit differently, but
Okay.
essentially with right to work for less is you can't be forced to even pay a fee for the maintenance of the bargaining process. So you don't even have to do anything. So essentially what it's doing is setting up a situation having freeloaders or free riders where you get the benefit of having the protections of a contract, but you don't have to pay for anything to enjoy that. And for us, for state employees, that's the way it is. So a member could decide to opt out of our union, but under the law, they would still get the protection of the grievance procedure and the benefits of the contract that we negotiate. And some people will call them free riders or free loaders. So essentially, that was the difference. You were never forced to technically
Right.
be in the union, but you had to pay at least a fee, again, to maintain the contract, essentially, in the bargaining process. And so when Michigan became the 24th right to work state, you don't even have to pay that fee anymore. You can totally opt out.
But isn't there some sort of almost like open enrollment period that comes up once a year where you declare whether you're in or out? And haven't some people been not paying their dues?
I can't,
Expect-
yeah, I mean, I cannot speak that because, again, we're
You're
civil service and our rules, we have a rule set up through the Civil Service Commission. That's not how our rules
That's
are
not
set
how
up,
yours work.
but it could be for other public employee unions.
Well, we're joined by Mike Scouty, who is the general counsel for the Michigan Education Association, and also by Nancy Knight, who is the communications director. I'll have to move our webcam, keep moving it around in order to be able to webcast here. But I'd like to bring you into the conversation and find out what is the status for collecting dues from members who are teachers here as part of the MEA. How does that differ, or does it, from the system that Ray is facing with his employees?
Um, Mike Shouty, yeah, thank you for having us. Yeah, we are also a little different. Number one, we have a very large membership, 115,000 members. And we have a number of employers that we deal with because we deal with school districts, both represent teachers, but also educational support professionals such as classroom paraprofessionals and bus drivers and food service employees and maintenance workers and custodial. Also higher ed, represent higher ed bargaining units. Our situation, we do have what's called an opt-out window, and so I think that's probably what you were referring to.
Yeah.
And we've had that in place for many, many years. It's been upheld as being lawful by the Michigan Court of Appeals. We have a fiscal year that basically tracks the school year. And so we ask our members to commit to pay dues for a year. A lot of our budgeting happens like any other organization on a fiscal year basis. And so many decisions with regard to services are made. So we ask people to commit to us for a year. They sign an agreement that says that they will do that. And they can opt out during the month of August per our bylaws by sending a written opt-out. Corporate interests are trying to challenge that. Interests that are interested in defeating unions in this state are once again trying to challenge what is settled law, arguing that the things have changed based on the right to work legislation that passed. So we are in litigation over that issue.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing.
We've heard of, at least I've heard a lot of outrageous claims about how many people opt out. What's typical in a year, the percentage of opt out?
Well, the first year that the opt-outs could take place, it was very low, we have August coming, and who knows? We're certainly hopeful that our members recognize not only the services that we provide to the membership, but also the fact that we are the one organization out there standing up for public education, standing up against the corporatization of the public education system. So
you really are under assault. I mean, it's very clear. I mean, and this is one of the ways. One last question on that issue is it automatic payroll deduction, or do people have to mail you their money each month?
Well, that's a great question. So unlike any other union in the state, public school employers cannot deduct dues. So once again, another way that public school employees have been treated differently than all other union employees in the state. So if you work for the city, it's perfectly legal to have a dues deduction provision. It's still legal in higher education. So most unions, police and fire, they can deduct dues through dues checkoff system, which is part of your collective bargaining negotiated agreement. The legislature made that unlawful for public school employees. So
when did they do that?
That was also in 2012 when
that was part of it. So
right. That's Public Act 53.
Okay, 53. I have a hard time keeping track of all the numbers and what
Me
the
too.
consequences have been. Nancy, let's bring you in on the conversation and hear about what kind of impact that has on your planning, when it must be difficult not knowing for sure what to count on. And
well, it does and it doesn't, because, our experience has been this past year, because we've been through a full year of it now, that we're finding the vast majority of our members see the value in being part of the Michigan Education Association, because they see how hard we are working to make sure that there's good public policy around education in the state of Michigan. And so they value the fact that we speak up for them on their behalf in the legislature and other places, and so they uh, appreciate the work that their association is doing on their behalf. And, we have seen very high, of those individuals who have had to move into a new system of paying dues, we're seeing very high percentages of those individuals who continue to pay their dues either by check or using a credit card or by using ACH with their banks. And so we are not, we have not seen a big fluctuation this year because we're seeing many of our members convert to a different form of dues payment. As Mike said, though, I mean, we'll see again this August what that looks like. But last year, the first year that they could opt out, it was approximately 1%. We lost about 1,500 members out of a 115,000 member organization.
Are you seeing concerted efforts on the part of pressure groups to persuade teachers to opt out?
We have seen efforts specifically on the part of the Mackinac Center to encourage members to opt out. And yet what we're finding is that many of our members are insulted by the approaches that the Mackinac Center has used. I mean, they've been contacted on their school email, which is something that even the Michigan Education Association doesn't do. They have, which has, been a real sore spot, not only with our members, but with school district administration as well. They've also had literature mailed to their homes, and most recently had a postcard mailed to their homes suggesting that what our teachers do during the summer is sit at the lake and or attend baseball games. And many of our members found that very insulting because that's not how they spend their summers. And they felt that the Mackinac Center is really out of touch in terms of what public employees are doing in terms of their summer work, which is primarily they're preparing for the next year. They're working on continuing their education. And in other cases, they're also working a second job because they need money to bridge those summer months. And so our members, quite frankly, in some ways, the Mackinac Center did us a favor because they organized our members, and our members, they were contacting us, unsolicited, contacting us and writing us saying how upset they were by these tactics.
Well, the efforts to demonize teachers, firefighters, police, and the success that they've had with some of those efforts has absolutely stunned me. Because I don't know why we seem to be a society increasingly resentful of everyone else. I want mine, but I don't know where, that anybody else deserves anything. And it's really of concern because we see the legislation for things like right to work written by ALEC. It's sort of cookie cutter. Let's go across the country and every place there's a Republican governor. Let's try to get these programs in place. All of a sudden, though, when it comes to those charter school teachers, aren't they supposed to be the heroes because they're not like those evil unionized teachers? Is that part of this whole narrative that you have coming at you?
Well, I think we've recently found out that many of the charter efforts that have been out there have actually been failed experiments. And what we're finding out in Michigan, we have a 20-year history now of charter schools, and most recently the Detroit Free Press did a series on charter schools and charter education. And we're finding that instead of it being better, it's maybe as good as, and in many cases less than what's happening in our public schools. So quite frankly, I think that the whole charter school movement was a way to corporatize public education. And what we see happening is we're not getting the results, or they're not getting the results that they expected through charter public schools. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some good charter public schools out there, and we've seen some of those schools do a great job with kids, but the vast majority, we're finding out, are not doing the job they purported they would do. And quite frankly, today, Mike Flanagan came out, the superintendent of public instruction, saying that he's going to exercise his authority and he is going to take a look at these low performing and non performing charter schools and take a serious look at pulling their charters because they're not doing what they promised the public they would do.
This may be a real general question, but what's the attitude of the professional school administrators and their school boards across the state? My feeling is it's not negative to unions. Is that,
No, I mean, in many places, we have really good working relationships with our school administrators and school boards because, we have an understanding that we all have to work together to make public education work in this state, particularly when that the resources for public education are becoming more limited through the Snyder administration. And we're finding out that, we all have to row this boat together in order to make public education work. And so there are many positive and working relationships being formed between school administration, school management, school boards, and the school employees that work in those districts.
when did public teachers unions come into place in Michigan? Trying to refresh my memory.
I'm not sure I can say either.
I mean, we've been around for over 100 years.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it used to be on South Washington, that was the Michigan Education Association.
Well, when we look at
North
things like
Washington.
charter schools, what we see is that this to me is some of the worst of crony capitalism. It's a way, when you have to take a profit margin out of a public enterprise, what you're really doing is you're reducing the resources to be able to run that enterprise, whatever it is, in order to be able to pay people a profit. It doesn't leave as much money to do the work. So what do you do to get around that? You cherry pick the best students, or you don't take the students with special needs. You find ways to be able to reduce costs by reducing the wages to the people who work there. And if you demonize teachers along the way, it makes it easier to do that. I know people, friends of mine, working for public schools in other states for very low wages. They're very dedicated to education. They do it more out of dedication. I keep wondering how much longer they're going to be able to survive doing that. But we have in this state something else that's unique, which is emergency managers. And that means that they can come in and make all sorts of startling changes. You see that, don't you, Ray, in the public sector yourself? One of the things you were telling me about is AFSCME has been looking at what's been happening in our prisons.
Yeah, so the food service responsibilities were outsourced last year, and it's been really
I'll say
not a good record since that they
unmitigated disaster.
laid off.
Is that?
Since,
Not to say it wasn't predicted, though.
since they
You
no.
were here predicting it.
Yes, and we represent quite a few members that work for the Department of Corrections, so I'm familiar with the issue. We don't represent the food service workers, but when you work in a correctional facility, the number one priority is security, and everything falls down from security. And the people that work in the kitchen were cross-trained as officers as well as people that prepared food. And so when you outsource highly trained people and you bring in people for half the wages and you're dealing in a correctional setting, bad things can happen. And on Thursday, I know that Council 25 asked me is having a press conference at 10:30 here in Lansing regarding some of the concerns that have happened because of the outsourcing. And we were involved with that, the local 6,000, because at the time when they outsourced the food service workers, they wanted to outsource all mental health and physical health in the prison.
Right.
And fortunately, they did not. And we had a task force that I was part of, and we went to the lawmakers and said, hey, look, the only way you're going to save money is by providing less quality care to the prisoners, which is going to be bad outcomes from the state of Michigan. And fortunately, they did not outsource physical health or mental health, but they did outsource food service, and we've had this problem. And also, if you remember, I think I was on your show, I talked about the fact they outsourced direct care workers in Grand Rapids Veterans Home. And there's been some problems there as well. So there's quite a record of bad things happening when you outsource important state services.
Well, you've seen cases of missed meals, poor quality meals. You've seen fraternization between the people who are dispensing the food and the prisoners themselves, contraband being brought in, all sorts of security breaches. I mean, it seems to have been, there have been quite a few penalties and fines toward Aramark already. I gather that the press conference on Thursday will be announcing some new findings. And that, I mean, it's not been working. And what we had before were good paying jobs, tough jobs to do. I mean, I had a, my former husband, I have so many husbands, I have a lot of good stories from him, who said he worked as a prison corrections officer for a while, and he said all I was doing was serving my sentence, but on 8-hour shifts. I mean, it's not an easy job. And what we see now is that those jobs have been really devalued. We don't have as much money going back into the economy from workers with good wages. It puts pressure on other wages not to go up. I mean, it just seems to me to be a downward cycle. When does this end? What's happening?
It's not ending. And when I'm listening to my fellow unionists over here from MEA, when you talk about charter schools, it reminds me of what's going on with the state. Now, the latest is the Department of Community Health. They want to essentially outsource our psychiatrists. We represent psychiatrists that work in 5 hospitals around the state, Walter Reuther Psychiatric Hospital. And the work that they do is really important. So, for example, these are the people that evaluate whether people are competent to stand trial. And we've all seen the news of the shootings and people with mental illness, and these are also the same people that when prisoners are released from institutions, because we have so many mentally ill people in our 32 facilities, that make decisions about what's going to happen, what kind of treatment people are going to be receiving when they're released. And so there's right now what's called a CS-138 to outsource $7.5 million over 2 years. And I sat down with some of our members, and that would pretty much probably wipe out the rest of our psychiatrists, our MDs. And what happens when you farm out work like that, you don't get the continuum of care in the facilities. You don't have the patient doctor relationships. You have constant turnover. And really, what needs to happen is the state needs to pay our professionals a competitive wage
Right.
and get people committed to stay in the state facilities. So anyway, when you ask me when will it end, every time I turn around, we're dealing with outsourcing. And I use the word outsourcing because that's what it is. It's outsourcing, good paying state jobs to who knows where it's going to go. Sometimes they outsource the work to people out of state or out of the country even, depending on what type of responsibilities you're talking about. But same thing's happening with the Department of Human Services. This budget cycle, they outsource all foster care in Kent County, and there's been talk in the legislature about extending that to the rest of the state, moving into the future. And we know that, again, just like in corrections, if you outsource important responsibilities like child welfare, you can have bad outcomes. So I think this ends when we get some new leaders in the Capitol. I think that's when it ends.
Every study we've looked at, for every dollar that you put in on prevention with young people, you're going to get 2 back at the other end. And so it seems to me that this is long range, a disastrously short-sighted budget cut idea.
One of the things that was mentioned is the Mackinac Center, and I'm quite familiar with them when I worked in state government. They became bitter enemies of the agency I worked for. But what's being done to counter their very successful campaigns? People seem to have an ear for them, and they get away with a lot, frankly. They play pretty loose and easy. Is there anything being done in an organized way to answer their claims every time they make one?
So much misinformation.
Well, I think that one of the things about the Mackinac Center is I think they see themselves as more important than they actually are, because quite frankly, a lot, of their propaganda is falling on deaf ears. So, we look at it as, the Mackinac Center is going to be out there saying the things that they're going to say, and quite frankly, we think it's more important to educate members on the good things the Michigan Education Association is doing on their behalf, and how we're working in the area of public policy to make both their working conditions and the learning conditions of the students the best that they can be. So, quite frankly, I mean, the Mackinac Center, we don't want to get into a tit for tat relationship with them. I mean, they're constantly calling the MEA for opinion on this, that, and the other thing. And quite frankly, it's just another opportunity for them to sling mud at our hardworking educational professionals in our public schools. And quite frankly, we don't want to give them that opportunity to do that. And so, in many cases, we feel that we need to be out there telling our story rather than trying to counteract the stories that they're telling because our members are smart enough to know the difference between the two.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Ray Holman of the UAW, and we're also talking with Mike Shouty and also with Nancy Knight of the Michigan Education Association about some of the challenges that the union workers and the state of Michigan public union workers are facing. One of the things I've been seeing recently are the budget cuts coming this year again for Detroit. I mean, we've just seen education really, every time you turn around, it seems there's a new chipping away at budgets for the schools. When you're talking about classes in Detroit, which is one of the tougher districts to have to teach in, and 43 students in some cases in the classroom potential, I don't see how you can have that many students in a classroom and even remotely be able for one teacher to teach students effectively. How do we stop this expansion? I mean, I find it very amusing that the same politicians who are always quick to say, well, class size doesn't really matter. We've looked at the research. Class size doesn't matter. Meanwhile, of course, I'm sending my kids to a $40,000 a year school with nice tiny classes. So apparently they think for public consumptions, they think one thing, and for private consumption, they think another. What are we able to do on class size and what's happening with budget cuts here? Maybe Mike, I'll throw that one to you about what can we expect this fall? Is it going to get better or worse in terms of class size and budget cuts? And
Well, like Nancy mentioned, we have a saying that we really believe in, which is that our members' working conditions are the students' learning conditions. So one of the ways that we address issues like class size is through the collective bargaining process. And there's a number of contracts that we've negotiated that deal with class size, deal with overages, and so and it's not just class size with the supplies and all sorts of things. Our members unfortunately are asked to, or the reality of their job is they have to spend a lot of money out of pocket. But we do negotiate some stipends in our collective bargaining agreements that directly benefit the students in the classroom. So that's really one way we try to address it is through the bargaining process, which as union advocates we're all quite familiar with. So as far as the legislature, what we're dealing with is when Rick Snyder first came into office, there was tremendous gutting of the finances that go to public education. And so when he talks about, well, I've added,
that's after the cuts.
and we're nowhere near where we were.
Never been made whole.
Never been made whole. So nowhere near.
Right.
And so, that's the reality. And if you want to know how much your child's school district has lost, we have a great website called Kids Not CEOs. You can go in there and find out exactly how much money has been taken from your school district since Rick Snyder and this legislature has come to be.
Well, we don't seem to see school budgets turning around anytime in the near future, and that's worrisome. With emergency managers on top, there's enough pressure already within the state, but I'm seeing even more worrisome things coming out of some other states. California recently, the court decision that said that tenure could no longer be used appeared. I don't know on appeal whether it's going to hold up, but it certainly is a worrisome trend. I kind of worry when I look at the Supreme Court that they might view the same thing. And I find this such a strange mindset. The mindset is that if you gain experience in a job and you have any idea what you're doing, and I can be honest about it as somebody who teaches myself, that it took me probably 5 to 10 years to get a good handle on what it really takes to be able to do a good job as a teacher. It's saying that experience is a bad thing. All of a sudden, those are the bad teachers. They are the dead weight. They are the ones that you want out of the system, as if somehow proficiency should work against you. I mean, like, right, CEOs, right, when they get to be about 50 years old after they learn the job, we just shouldn't hire them anymore? I don't think so. In any other field, that's valued, people who have that kind of expertise. How is that a threat here? What would it mean are we about to see an effort nationwide to get rid of tenure?
Well, first of all, the California decision is, I believe, an anomaly.
Okay. I hope so
So,
too.
but one thread that is common is that the litigation was funded by corporate interests. And so once again, the interests of the corporations running against the public interest. These laws have been in place for years, 60 plus years. And so, creative argument, I'll give them that, to go in and identify particular school districts that are struggling and saying tenure is the problem. That's the issue. And to me, the decision, which I've read, it's all of 5 pages, is the very definition of judicial activism. It's very short on any kind of facts or analysis. So our brothers and sisters out at the California Teachers Association are confident that not only are they involved in the litigation, but the state is defending the tenure law, and they're confident on appeal that it's going to be reversed. But I do think it's dangerous to extrapolate anything from California to Michigan. Remember, this was a decision out of a California state court regarding the California statutes, which should be surprising or to all of us, are different than the Michigan statutes, and the California Constitution. So it wasn't a claim based on the U.S. Constitution.
I'm just surprised by how much settled law seems to be up for grabs again today.
Right.
I mean, these are things that I didn't even think would come up. I mean, why would anybody try to even bring a suit to overturn tenure? Because it just isn't going to happen.
Right.
There's so much precedent, but it seems that everything is up for grabs again.
Right. Well, and I do think that this has created a scenario where there are going to be additional claims made in other states. There was, I believe, talk of one in New York. We just have to remind ourselves what tenure is and what it isn't. A lot of people don't understand exactly what it means. And tenure in Michigan has served the educational community and the state well since its enactment. It ensures that qualified teachers are not dismissed for arbitrary reasons, and that's really all that it is.
It's misperceived, isn't it, as being
really
some sort of
is.
lifetime guarantee of employment, no matter what, and that you can do anything and still have a job. And
as a lawyer that has represented education employees for 15 years, I can tell you that's not what it is. Just like anything, all it is it's a due process system. It's so there's a fair procedure so that somebody, the employer raising a concern has to substantiate that concern, whatever that concern might be. So we believe that when the legislature weakens these protections, it only serves to harm students by increasing the likelihood that these qualified teachers, as you mentioned, the more you're in a job, the more experience you get, the better you get. I certainly know that happened in my career. So it's really to protect that when you go from one administration to a new administration, it isn't a scenario where, well, those higher paid teachers, I'm all of a sudden I'm much more interested in what they're doing. I'm going to be watching those teachers because they cost me more money, or they're maybe willing to speak up more than a brand new teacher and challenge the administration on educational policy.
That's what those crotchety folks like me get. You get to a certain age and you don't care anymore, and you start, why are we doing it this way? What do you mean? Because we've always done it.
Right. And of course, we have to remind ourselves that the discussion, bringing things up in an educational setting is a good thing.
Yeah.
Having those kinds of discussions on what's the best way for our students to succeed should be viewed as a good thing, not a negative thing.
Has there been any polling recently of parents in this state that send their kids to public schools about what their perceptions are of unions? Has that ever been done, or have you seen any?
There's been a lot of polling done over the years. I'm not aware of any recent polling that has been done, but most communities give their public schools a very favorable rating when asked, and specifically, they think that their child's teacher is doing a good job, or their child's bus driver is doing a good job. And it's that community connection that public employees have with their communities that makes all the difference. And I wanted to get back for a minute when we talk about, national trends and what we see happening across the country. And I really think that we have to focus on the fact that this is a conservative corporate takeover of the
Yes.
public interest and the public good. And what their agenda is to corporatize every public service that they can. And they're really attacking some of the cornerstones that this country was built on. And they're definitely trying to make sure that we have a class of haves and have-nots and do away with the middle class, because it was the unions that created a middle class for this country. And quite frankly, these corporate interests are out there to make profits. And one of the last places that they can look to make profits is in the public sector. And so you see these challenges occurring because it's the last bastion of that where they can see making some money, off the public sector. And yet we've seen some of these experiments fail miserably. Muskegon Heights
Yes.
is a
Perfect
big example of that. Mosaica came in, they had an emergency manager,
Yep.
and the emergency manager awarded the charter school contract to Mosaica. And after 2 years, there are millions of dollars in debt, and they have literally pulled out of Muskegon Heights,
Left them high and dry on
left
top.
them high and dry, and now you have the entity, because the school board still remains in Muskegon Heights, struggling to put an education system back in place for those students. So when we look at the big picture, not only in this state but across the country, we see that there is some very conservative money, like the Koch brothers, who are pouring millions of dollars into campaigns so as to sway the public with their advertising on national television and radio, saying that that the work that public employees are doing could be better done by private employees, and that simply is not true.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing.
Have those conservative interests had any success in taking over local school boards?
I think that we have seen some of that occur across the state of Michigan, and but we also see that when things swing too much one direction or the other, we find that the communities are saying, this is not what we wanted in our communities. This is not what we want in our public schools. And quite frankly, though we do see some candidates who don't appear to have the best interest of the public schools at heart, and we see them get elected, we also see them getting unelected. It's not that they're recalled, but it's that when they run again, for their next cycle, they're not reelected. So I think that, parents, and educators, we want the best for the students here in the state of Michigan, and are working hard to deliver that. And we have seen, that whether you're in a K-12 district or if you're part of higher education, it doesn't matter. Everybody is doing more with less. And they're trying to make sure that every student in this state gets the education they deserve. And even though the budget's been set for next year, and it's a very small increase for many of our school districts, a $51 per student increase doesn't even begin to cover the costs our districts are facing, not only in educational materials, but infrastructure and all the things that we need to make a quality environment for the students we are trying to educate in Michigan. So you know, as Mike said, you know, on our website, Kids Not CEOs, you can go and look at your district or a neighboring school district and see how many millions of dollars they have lost over the last 4 years. And we've even factored in, we've updated our website to even show, even with the $51 that's promised next year, how uh, much deficit these districts are suffering from. And these are districts that were never in deficit. These were districts that never have never been, you know, not, I shouldn't say they have never been, you know, imprudent in how they spent their money. I mean, they've been very fiscally responsible school districts, and now we see them struggling to make ends meet.
You know, when I look at it, I realize that yes, on the one hand, we see that they view schools as sort of a ripe plum to be picked in terms of a whole new opportunity for corporations that can be formed around the whole charter school idea. But it also seems to me that there is almost an effort to simply undermine and turn education into worker training as opposed to helping people to do critical thinking, challenge the established order. I mean, back in my era, you know, I'm one of those aging hippies. We used to have bumper stickers that said question authority. Now it says no, submit to authority, and otherwise we'll pull your grants, we'll pull your wages, we'll pull everything. And it just seems to me that it's a threat-based system saying we want conformists who are just willing to take the jobs we have and not question what's happening. And to me, that was never the point of education. It is to spark kids to think of a new and better future and how to get there. And I see part of that is constantly. Ray, I want to bring you back in the discussion because, you know, part of it is when I'm teaching young people, and I know from friends of mine who are in the K-12 public system, their families don't have good jobs.
That's right.
That's part of the reason kids don't succeed in school.
That's right. I mean, I think it was mentioned before, we're seeing the elimination of the middle class. You're either a, you know, NBA superstar with a 47-inch vertical leap that can shoot three-pointers, or a rock star, or a CEO, or an MD maybe. But yeah, it's really true. And you know, it's sad. And it's something that we see every day in the Department of Human Services. Things have stabilized a little bit, but boy, when the Great Recession hit, the fall of 2008, 2009, our lobbies were just jam packed, and they were jam packed with chronically people, you know, chronically living in poverty. They were people that worked for auto parts suppliers that for the first time were
Right.
at DHS and things like that. And so that was a really, you know, shocking period, and stabilized a little bit. But yeah, it's real difficult to get a good paying job. You know, when I think about when I came into state government 22 years ago, you had a pension, you had full health care. It was a job, it was a destination job, it was a career job. And
Right.
now it seems as if they want to chew people up for 3 or 4 years and push them out and bring somebody else in. There's a lot of automation. You know, I come from the child welfare and investigated child abuse for many, 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 many years. But when I look at what our caseworkers are doing now, it's this you know, it reminds me of teaching to the test, maybe type of thing, where you're just filling in data out and you're taking away individual discretion. So not only is it harder to get a good paying job with good benefits, the jobs are so micromanaged and they're so cookie cutter too. That's something that I'm seeing in a lot of
I'm
the state
seeing a lot of
jobs.
that too. I mean, I'm hearing teachers complain that now I just have to teach to the test. I can't be creative. I used to have kids who loved books. Now there's a specific set of books and in the classroom, and they must all go through them in this rigid order. You were talking about this. I watched as some systems were coming into the state government. I was a consultant as a lot of computer systems with juvenile justice. Fill in, if you don't have data, then you can't do anything. It's the only way we prove success. Well, you know what? That isn't the only way you prove success. When I walk out my front door in the morning, I know whether my community is getting safer or unsafe. We saw what happened in Chicago over the weekend. I mean, we're coming apart at the seams. We need more good jobs. We need more stable communities, and unions were always part of the mix. How do we get that conversation back to saying unions are good,
Well,
that they are part of?
you know, you're absolutely right. And one thing that we're doing at the UAW Local 6000 is we have a Can We Talk program. And essentially that's all it is going out and talking with our members and empowering our members. I mentioned that there was moves afoot to outsource our psychiatrists. Well, we're going to their psychiatrists and sitting down with them and saying, you know, what do you need? You know, you're an MD, you're a powerful person in the community, work with us. And fortunately, some of them have. And what we want to do is talk and communicate with each other. And, you know, that's what the union does. It's It provides workers with a voice and provides workers with dignity, which is expressed through the contract. And that's something that we fight for.
Tell me a little bit, because we focus a lot on wages, but in reality as well, it's worker safety and all sorts of other worker rules. What are the kinds of issues that come up?
Absolutely. And I mentioned a voice, and that and in state government, it's so important um, that you can bring people that work in a correctional institution to the Capitol and tell the lawmakers exactly what goes on, so that we can treat people humanely, so we can have good outcomes. With caseworkers, unions give people the opportunity for empowerment to speak out, and often what we do is we want to serve the citizens. We're successful if we're doing a good job for Michigan citizens. And unions are a great place, a great platform to get that message out. And that's another thing that we're doing too is encouraging our members to speak out. Um, but yeah, a voice. And again, it's not just the pay and the benefits, which is important, but it's the quality of the work that our members are doing. They want to contribute. They don't do the job just for the money.
Bonnie, before the show, and Bonnie and I were talking about an article that goes in the Wall Street Journal about a family of four now to have a decent living. It requires $130,000 a year. It tells us where we're at in this country.
And that doesn't still give you enough to have a secure retirement or savings or all of the other, but it gets you by for now. And instead, what we see are stagnant wages over many years. It certainly is tied to this. And I guess part of, and this may be a trivial part of it, but it's part of what really bothers me. I am really tired of the sort of billionaire fix. I really don't need Bill Gates to come in anymore and say, I know how to fix the schools. Bill Gates was a dropout. What do you mean? I mean, Bill Gates would have been successful no matter what school he went to. He came from gifted parents, had an enriched home, resources, all sorts of opportunities. He could have taught himself. I mean, he was one of those. So somehow the idea that he has an inside track on how to fix our public schools seems to me to be incredibly naive. Why don't you just pay your taxes at rates that we would like to see rich people pay them, so that we can actually have public schools run by the people who know how to run them? That seems to me a novel idea that's worth trying. We used to do it that way. We're seeing rising inequality, and unions have always been a bulwark against that. Well, I'm seeing two-track schools here. I mean, once we tied it to the property tax, local schools to the property tax, we have affluent communities with affluent schools, and we have poor neighborhoods with poor schools. As a product of the poor schools in inner city Cleveland, where I used to have to go by the bums in the alley on the morning who would expose themselves to me on the way, and I kind of learned to wave at them. I know what it's like to go to an inner city school that may not have much in resources, and you have to be pretty tough to be able to come out of that environment and get somewhere. But I see it getting worse again and not better. How do we make it get better?
Well, one thing we do is we elect the right people, and talk about Bill Gates. Well, our governor is a former CEO who made a lot of money, and I don't know that this strategy of shifting $1.8 billion to big businesses has worked. And so I think we need to have people really turn out this year, and I know that that's something I'm really going to be working on, is getting people to turn out to vote in November.
This idea that we should run government like a business. Yes.
Yeah.
No, we shouldn't.
Right.
It's government. It's not the same as a business. Bill, you had something?
Well, I think that was a good question. What's the MEA see as this midterm election? You working hard at it?
Yes, we are, because it's very important to the Michigan Education Association that we elect friends of education. It really isn't about what party you belong to. It's about what you want to do for the students in the state of Michigan, that you understand that the problems that communities and districts are facing, and that we want legislators who are going to work with us to fix and solve those problems. And we've already seen that start on some fronts, particularly with the educator evaluation bills that are now have moved through the House and now in the Senate. And so we remain optimistic that we're going to be able to form partnerships with those legislators and elect people who are going to do the right thing for public education here in the state.
That's a tough world out there. I'm very hopeful that we'll see. Mike, do you have any parting comments on what we have to start doing to turn things around here?
Well, I find it very refreshing that somebody like Mark Schauer when he's developing educational policy, where does he go to research and to collect information, but to the people that are actually the educators, the people that do the job on a day-to-day basis? Seems like a good place to start to me.
Certainly does. I'm always refreshed to see that. Thank you very much. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing. You've been listening to Lansing Online Radio News and we have had as our guest tonight Ray Holman of the UAW, Mike Shouty, and also Nancy Knight of the Michigan Education Association. Tune back in next Monday night at 7, and we will be here waiting for you with Lansing Online News Radio. Check out our webcast as well on our website. Thank you. If I can see which button to hit. There we go.
Well, thanks. Oh,
Thank you.
thanks
so
for having
much.
us.
Yeah, it's really.
I'm incredibly amazed at what is happening here in Michigan.
It's nice to meet you, Ray.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you.
I've never laid eyes on you.
Oh.
I don't think.
Nice to meet you guys. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.